She said, "You'll regret trusting an alien." The commander smiled. "I already regret not trusting sooner." The night sky over Talon 9 was the color of burnt iron. Storms rolled through the atmosphere like ancient engines, spitting static fire across the half-terraformed world. Beneath that bruised horizon, in the rusted skeleton of a crashed freighter, a crowd had gathered. Soldiers, scavengers, traders all pressed in for the auction. The air smelled of ozone and oil. Flickering hollow screens cast blue light over the faces of men who had forgotten what daylight meant. Voices rose like a fever, the sound of greed echoing in a place that had no laws left. From the shadows near the back, Commander Rian Holt stood still. His coat was heavy with desert dust, the fabric scored by old plasma burns. His left arm, half flesh, half carbon steel, rested quietly against his holster. He'd fought through 5 sectors of the Rift Wars, outlived every squad he'd ever led, and now carried silence like a weapon. He hadn't come to buy anything. He'd come because someone whispered that the Syndicate was selling living code. Hybrids, weapons, experiments the war should have buried. The auctioneer, a thick-necked scavenger draped in neon silk, clapped his hands. "Gentlemen," he barked, "what I offer tonight ain't just a creature. It's evolution on a leash." The crowd leaned forward. From a steel cage, guards dragged out a figure, slight, hooded, wrists bound in energy cuffs that hummed like angry wasps. A flash of silver skin glinted under the floodlight. "She's part Crithian, part human," the auctioneer said, his grin splitting wide. "Grown in the Rift Labs before the war burned them down. A telepathic interface core in her spine. You could pilot ships through her mind if you knew the codes. She's dangerous, sure, but worth her weight in antimatter." The hood was pulled back. The alien girl raised her chin. Her face was half-human, sharp-boned and tired, but fine veins of light ran across her temples like constellations under skin. Her eyes were metallic violet, reflecting the chaos around her. She didn't flinch when the crowd jeered. "Look at that glow," someone whistled. "How much to turn her core on?" The auctioneer chuckled. "Bidding starts at 200 credits. Hands lifted, numbers shouted. 200 became 3, then 5. Ryan's jaw flexed. His cybernetic fingers tapped once on the metal at his side, a rhythm from old habits. Assess, act, exit. But when the girl met his eyes, something broke through the calculation. Not fear, not even anger. Just a kind of resignation, so deep it looked like quiet fire. He whispered something, a word the microphone didn't catch, but the translator in Rian's implant flickered. "Don't help me." And then, the part of him that had sworn never to intervene again, the part he'd buried with his platoon at Sector 12, moved. He stepped forward. The crowd parted slightly, recognizing the insignia stitched on his sleeve. Human Defense Fleet, Commander Class. His kind didn't belong in outlaw markets. Ryan's voice was calm. "I'll pay 1 credit." Laughter broke out like thunder. "1 credit?" the auctioneer roared. "You mock the Syndicate, soldier?" Ryan didn't blink. 1 credit, not to own her, to free her. The laughter faltered. Someone spat near his boots. "You think this is charity hour, Commander?" Ryan's left hand twitched near his holster. A mechanical hum rose from the weapon there, old Earth steel upgraded with quantum charge. The sound silenced the crowd quicker than a sermon. "Take the coin," Rian said, "or keep talking." The auctioneer's smile flickered. He glanced around. Half the buyers were shifting uneasily, unsure whether a human war hero was bluffing. Finally, he snatched the coin Ryan flicked onto the counter. "Fine, take your malfunction." The cuffs released with a hiss. The girl stumbled, but stayed on her feet. Her wrists were marked where the plasma restraints had burned through the skin. Ryan approached slowly. He didn't touch her. He simply said, "You're free." Her eyes locked on his violet to gray. Then quietly, like a secret meant only for him, "You'll regret trusting an alien." Rian's mouth curved barely. "I already regret not trusting sooner." He turned. "Move." She followed, silent, her steps light as the hum of a dying drone. Behind them, the market's noise rose again, but this time, beneath it, a different frequency pulsed. the kind that meant someone was watching. Outside, the desert stretched in endless gray dunes of glass and rust. The half-moon reflected off the remains of orbital wreckage scattered across the horizon. Lightning rolled along the edges of the atmosphere like veins in the sky. They reached his skimmer, a low, armored vehicle patched with mismatched plating. Ryan climbed in, started the turbines, and motioned to the passenger seat. She hesitated. "If this is another cage—" "It's not," he interrupted, "but it moves faster than your feet." For a long moment she studied him, the calm authority in his tone, the war-hardened stillness. Then she sat. The skimmer rose in a spray of dust. For several minutes they said nothing. The landscape slid by twisted metal forests, old battlefields where burned mech shells still smoked from decades ago. Finally, Ryan spoke. "Name?" She didn't look at him. "Astra." "Designation?" She turned her head, expression flat. "They called me Prototype 47K. Not anymore." Her brow furrowed. "You think words change what we are?" "No," Rand said. "Actions do." He drove in silence after that, the engine's hum steady. Astra's gaze wandered to the night. "You were in the Rift Wars," she said quietly. "The markings on your coat, the crest of Epsilon Company." He nodded once. "I read the files. You were the one who bombed the Crithian citadels." Ryan's jaw tightened. "We were told there were no civilians left." Her voice softened, not accusing, just hollow. "There always are." Lightning split the sky again, reflecting off her skin. For a moment, she looked like the ghost of a civilization that had outlived its purpose. They drove until dawn. When the horizon began to burn gold, they reached the outlands, the fractured plains where old defense bunkers still stood. Ryan's base was built into the wreckage of a shuttle yard, half buried under slag and sand. As the skimmer descended, automated turrets rose from the dunes, scanning before lowering again. Inside, the corridors were clean but Spartan dim lights, metallic hums, faint smell of machine oil. "This is your base?" Astra asked. "It's a graveyard," Ryan replied. "I just keep it running." He handed her a ration pack and a blanket woven from thermal fibers. "There's a room past the generator bay. It locks from the inside." Her eyes flicked toward him. "Why?" "So you can sleep without wondering if I'll come in." That caught her off guard. She took the blanket slowly. "Humans usually guard what they buy." "I didn't buy you." "Then why?" He looked past her at the sunrise bleeding through the cracks in the steel. "Because someone should have freed you sooner." She said nothing. Just walked toward the room he'd pointed to, moving like a shadow that didn't know where to rest. When she reached the door, she paused. "Commander," she said quietly, not turning. He glanced up. "If you regret this, you can still leave me at the next port." Ryan leaned back in his chair, the glow from the data screen cutting a hard line across his face. "You don't throw away what you paid for." Her voice carried the faintest trace of bitter humor. "One credit," he smiled faintly, "still worth more than most." Hours later, the storm returned, sheets of static lightning shaking the horizon. Ryan sat in the comm room, scanning transmissions. Half the frequencies were noise. The other half whispered warnings. Syndicate patrols moving through the desert, tracking the missing hybrid. He knew they'd come. In the reflection of the screen, he caught his own face, the scar across his temple, the eyes too tired to look guilty anymore. Somewhere deep inside, the old instinct whispered, "You can't save everyone, Holt." But outside, he heard the quiet creak of the generator door. Astra stood there, barefoot, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her silver glow dimmed under the flickering light. "Someone's coming," she said. He nodded. "I know." Her gaze moved to the radar. "They'll kill you for freeing me." He shrugged slightly. "Then I'll try to make them regret it." Her lips parted, confusion flickering across her features as if she didn't know whether he was reckless or sincere. Maybe both. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Ryan powered down the console, stood, and met her gaze head on. Because I've seen what humans become when we forget we're supposed to protect life, not sell it. A beat passed, then another. Astra's voice softened, almost a whisper. You don't know what I am. Rian shook his head. Doesn't change what I see. What do you see? He didn't hesitate. Someone who deserves a second sunrise. For a long moment, she just looked at him, this broken soldier standing in a rusted outpost on a dead planet, telling her she was worth saving. Something fragile flickered behind her eyes. Not trust, not yet, but the faint pulse of possibility. Thunder cracked overhead. A warning klaxon blared across the bunker, incoming vehicles. 6 signatures moving fast. Ryan's voice was suddenly all command. Basement bay, now! Astra's eyes flared with faint blue light as the alien code in her blood reacted to fear. They tracked me. Good, Ryan said, loading his rifle. Let them come. Maybe they'll teach us both something about regret. Outside, the desert storm swallowed the dawn. Sand hissed like static. The hum of engines drew closer, deep and low. Ryan stood at the threshold, rifle steady, eyes narrowed to a soldier's calm. Beside him, Astra's hands glowed, threads of energy swirling in her palms like captive lightning. Commander, she said quietly, if I die here, you won't. You sound sure. He allowed a thin smile. I don't make bets I can't win. The first flash of enemy headlights cut through the storm, outlining the silhouettes of armored bikes closing fast. Astra's eyes lit bright violet. You still regret trusting an alien? Ryan cocked his rifle, voice low but steady. I regret waiting this long to have backup. The wind howled. The desert trembled. And somewhere between war and something dangerously close to faith, humanity met the unknown, not in hate, but in defiance. Dawn broke over Talon 9 like a bruise healing too slowly, violet light leaking through the ash clouds, dust settling over the scarred plain. The storm had passed, but the smell of iron burns still hung in the air. Inside the old shuttle yard base, the hum of generators filled the silence. Commander Ryan Holt sat at a steel table, cleaning his rifle with the precision of habit. Across from him, a thin trail of steam rose from 2 tin mugs. One sat untouched. The alien girl, Astra, stood by the wall, studying a hollow map flickering with damaged grids. Her skin, laced with faint circuitry, shimmered each time she moved. She had not spoken since the fight last night, and Ryan hadn't asked her to. He knew silence could be a kind of armor. When the alarm had sounded, the Syndicate scouts had come close, but not close enough to breach the perimeter. The desert had swallowed their engines by morning, leaving only tire tracks cut deep into the red dust. Ryan finally broke the quiet. You should eat. I don't eat, she said flatly. He glanced up. That's not true. Astra's turned, her expression unreadable. Crithian metabolism converts light and iron. Food slows the process. Ryan sipped his mug. Then slow it down. You need strength if we're staying alive. She tilted her head. You still think you can keep me? I'm not keeping you, he said. I'm keeping us both breathing. Astra's eyes flicked toward the entrance hatch where daylight bled through. For a heartbeat, Ryan thought she might walk out, vanish into the horizon. Instead, she crossed the room, took the mug, and drank. It wasn't much, but in a soldier's world, every act of choice mattered. By midday, the heat had turned sharp enough to warp metal. Ryan worked outside, repairing a damaged perimeter turret. Astra followed, silent, scanning the sky for movement. He handed her a spanner. Hold the plates steady. She hesitated, then crouched beside him. The alien runes etched along her forearm glowed faintly as she touched the weapon mount. The energy stabilized the metal instantly. Ryan raised a brow. Nanite welding? Adaptive, she said. It learns what you fix. Wish I had that during the war. She looked at him, curiosity ghosting through her tone. You fought in Epsilon? He nodded once. Before command stopped being human. Astra studied him for a moment. You're different from the others I've seen. Ryan didn't look up. Most of them are dead. No, she said softly. Different inside. He didn't answer, just tightened the bolt until it screamed. As the sun bled into orange haze, a distant rumble carried across the plains. Ryan froze, listening. It wasn't engines. It was thunder. The storms were coming back faster than forecasted. He wiped the sweat from his brow. Get inside. But Astra didn't move. She was staring toward the horizon, eyes glowing faintly. They're not just storms, she murmured. Magnetic interference fields. The syndicate scanners can't see through them. Ryan's instincts snapped into focus. We use it as cover then. Cover for what? He pointed at the cracked antenna tower near the ridge. If we want a chance at survival, I need that comm relay fixed. It's our only link to orbit. Her gaze hardened. You think someone will come for you? For both of us, he said. You may not believe in rescue, but I've seen worse odds turn. She looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. Then we move before the storm eats the sky. They reached the ridge by twilight. The air buzzed with static. Lightning crawled across the low clouds in crooked veins. Ryan climbed first, mechanical fingers digging into stone. Astra right behind him. Agile, her movements almost too precise to be human. The relay tower loomed ahead. A skeletal structure leaning into the wind. It had been dead since before the war ended. Cables snapped like whips in the gale. Ryan crouched near the base panel, pried it open, and cursed under his breath. Circuits fried. Astra knelt beside him, eyes bright. I can bridge it, but I'll need a power surge. From what? She glanced at his cybernetic arm. That. He stared at her. You're not plugging into me. Do you want the tower online or not? Ryan exhaled. You drain too much, you'll fry both of us. Astra's lips curved slightly. You always sound like you regret saying yes. He allowed himself a thin smirk. Only when I should have said no. She reached out, fingers brushing the metal of his wrist. The contact sent a faint current through his circuitry. A pulse that crawled up to his shoulder. Then light, soft silver light, spilled from her hands into the dead console. The tower shuddered. Screens flickered. A burst of static cut through the storm. Signals rising, Ryan muttered, checking the gauge. Good work. But Astra was trembling. The glow beneath her skin had dimmed. Too much? He asked. Her voice was faint. Worth it. The comm tower crackled to life, sending a single encoded burst into orbit. Coordinates, distress, identification. Ryan's chest eased slightly. Then from below, a distant mechanical shriek echoed across the desert. Astra's head snapped up. Drones! Ryan cursed. We've been marked. They slid down the ridge as the first syndicate scouts broke through the storm, 3 skimmers armed with mounted cannons. Plasma fire ripped across the rocks. Ryan rolled, pulled his rifle, and fired. One clean shot, blasting the front skimmer's sensor eye. It spun out, crashed into the sand. Astra raised her hands, energy spiraling around her fingers. The air trembled. She released a pulse that distorted gravity itself, flipping a second skimmer mid-air before it exploded. The last one kept coming, gunfire cutting through the wind. Ryan pushed her behind a fallen girder and reloaded. You can stop doing that, he said. Doing what? Trying to die useful? Astra looked at him, eyes narrow. You're welcome. The last skimmer banked hard, engines roaring. Ryan steadied his rifle, but Astra moved first, her circuits flaring white. The plasma in her veins surged outward, forming a shield that bent the incoming shots away like light on water. Ryan fired once through the distortion, the bullet finding the pilot's chest. The machine went down in a plume of fire. The silence that followed was sharp, broken only by rain beginning to fall through the electric haze. Ryan stood, breathing hard. You good? Astra wiped a streak of silver blood from her cheek. Define good, he almost smiled. Alive works. They made it back to the outpost long after dark. The storm howled above the metal roof. Astra collapsed onto a crate, skin flickering between light and shadow. Ryan set down his rifle and knelt beside her. "You're overheating," he said. "Your systems—" "I know," she muttered. "They're adapting." Crithian cores were never meant for long exposure to human atmosphere. Ryan fetched a coolant pack, pressed it against her wrist. The contact hissed softly. She watched him work, expression unreadable. "Why do you care?" "Because I can. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." Her gaze softened, just a fraction. "Your logic circuits are inefficient." He laughed quietly, surprising even himself. "Never had those installed." Astra tilted her head, studying him as though he were the one impossible thing in the room. When he rose to leave, she said, "You didn't ask what I was doing before you found me." "Didn't need to." "Why?" Ryan paused at the doorway. "Because it doesn't change what you are now." For the first time, her voice held something like warmth. "You talk like a man trying to believe his own mercy." He turned. "Maybe I am." That night, the base fell into uneasy quiet. Ryan sat in the control room, reviewing the transmission logs. A single reply had pinged from orbit, encrypted coordinates, faint but real. Someone had heard them. He looked toward Astra's quarters. Her door was shut, light faint beneath it. Inside, Astra sat cross-legged on the floor, a small device hovering before her. Her neural log. Holotext shimmered across its surface as she wrote silently with her mind. "He does not interrogate. He does not touch. He leaves warmth at my door without a sound. I don't trust it, but I find myself waiting for it." Her hand trembled. The line between survival and attachment blurred like sand and wind. In the early hours, lightning split the sky again. Ryan woke to the low rumble of the storm and something else. A whisper through the comm feed. "Commander Holt, transmission acknowledged. Extraction window in 72 hours. Confirm status." He stared at the message, then at Astra's closed door. Extraction meant leaving Talon 9. It also meant handing her over to command for assessment. He powered down the console without replying. Outside, the storm burned brighter, crawling like fire through the night. By morning, Astra emerged wearing a rough flight jacket over her suit. "The storm's clearing," she said. "Good," Ryan answered. "We'll check the northern fence." They walked the ridge in silence. The desert stretched endless, the wrecks of old machines half buried in the sand. Astra spoke first. "I've seen humans destroy everything they touch, but you fix things that aren't yours." Ryan shrugged. "Maybe that's our best rebellion." She looked at him sideways. "Rebellion?" He met her gaze. "Against the kind of world that made you." The wind lifted her hair. "You think I can be unmade?" "No," he said. "I think you can start over." Something like a smile touched her lips, faint but real. "You always sound like you believe it." "I have to. Someone should." That night, Ryan found a fresh mark scratched into the metal by the door of his quarters, a single Crithian symbol glowing faintly blue. He traced it with his fingertips. When Astra passed behind him, she said quietly, "It means safe ground." He looked at her. "You did that?" She nodded. "I used to mark hiding places during the war, for the ones who didn't make it." Ryan's voice dropped. "And now?" Her answer was almost a whisper. "Now it's just a habit. But maybe it means something again." They stood there for a moment, neither moving, the hum of the generators their only witness. Outside, the desert winds began to calm. Inside, something far older than fear began to take root between them, fragile, stubborn, alive. The night over Talon 9 pulsed with electricity. Thin lines of lightning threaded through the clouds, turning the outpost into a skeleton of moving light. Inside, everything was quiet, except the rhythm of old machines breathing. Commander Ryan Holt slept in the chair, near the main console, boots still on, rifle within reach. He never slept long. A sound woke him, faint, metallic, deliberate. Not the storm, not wind. He rose silently, hand to his holster. The noise came from the storage wing, the one sealed off after the first ambush. He moved through the corridor, the lights flickering overhead. There, half bent over a terminal, stood Astra. Her hair shimmered faintly silver in the dark, the glow from her circuitry pulsing in sync with the system she was hacking. Ryan stopped at the doorway. You planning to take the whole base apart, or just the memory banks? Astra didn't turn. You locked the data like you're hiding something. Maybe I am. Then we're even, she said softly, fingers still moving. He stepped closer. Whatever you're looking for won't help you. She looked up. Her eyes caught the dim blue of the screen, luminous, alien, defiant. You don't know what I'm looking for. Ryan folded his arms. Then tell me. I want to know who built me, she said. The files on Project Riftbreed, they're here. He froze. She saw it. You do know. Ryan's jaw tightened. You shouldn't open that. Astra pressed the key anyway. The screen filled with archived documents, fragmentary reports, names, serials, battle coordinates, and there, among the command signatures, was one that stopped her breath. Commander Ryan Holtfield Recovery Division, Operation Sanctum. Astra's voice went low, sharp as glass. You were there. I wasn't part of the labs, he said quietly. I was part of the cleanup. We burned what was left. What was left were people, she snapped. Children, hybrids. You burned us. He took a step forward, regret carved deep across his face. I didn't know what they were doing until it was too late. I tried to save them, she cut him off, laughing bitterly. Do you know what it's like to wake up inside a cage built by your enemy and realize you are the weapon? Ryan said nothing. He'd faced enemies with guns, monsters with claws. But nothing hit like the truth she'd just thrown. The storm outside cracked loud enough to rattle the walls. Finally, he said, I can't erase what humans did to you, but I can decide what we do next. Astra's breathing slowed, the fury cooling into something colder. Next? Those syndicate ships weren't random. Someone knew you were alive. That means they're still hunting what's left of Riftbreed. If they find those labs first, they'll restart it. Her eyes flickered, half human, half light. And you want me to help you stop them? I want you to choose to, he said. Silence. Astra turned off the terminal. I spent my life being used by men who called it a choice. Then don't do it for me, Ryan said quietly. Do it for the ones still in cages. Her gaze met his cautious, unwilling, but shaken. And if I refuse? He stepped back. Then I walk you to the edge of the desert myself. No cuffs, no threats. For a long moment, all she did was stare at him. Then she whispered, You talk like a man who believes in forgiveness. He shook his head. No, just the chance to do one thing right before the world ends. Morning came with smoke on the horizon. The outpost scanners caught movement fast, deliberate. Syndicate patrols sweeping the southern ridge. Ryan and Astra stood side by side on the balcony, binoculars trained on the desert. They're searching, Ryan said. For me, Astra murmured, for what I still remember. You said they can't track you through the storm. They can't, she said, but they can follow the power signatures from the tower we repaired. Then we need to move. To where, she asked. He pointed north. There's an old relay base under the cliffs. If the data cores survived, we can wipe the Riftbreed archives before the Syndicate reaches them. Astra's eyes glowed faintly, conflict flickering in the light. You'd destroy your own history? It was never worth keeping. They packed quickly. Ryan filled 2 ration kits in a med pack. Astra loaded her small plasma pistol in a canister of charged nanites. They left before dusk, riding the skimmer into the fading light. The desert stretched endless dunes of glass, storms burning faint on the horizon. The hum of the engine became the rhythm of their uneasy alliance. After a while, Astra said quietly, the humans called it Project Riftbreed. We called it Naran, the broken seed. They told us we were being made to end the war. They didn't say whose. Ryan listened without interrupting. They tested how long our minds could fuse with machines before we stopped dreaming. She continued. The others begged for death. I adapted. That's why I'm still alive. He looked at her. That's not why. You're alive because you fought to be. Her lips curved faintly, though it wasn't a smile. You make surviving sound noble. It is, he said. Every breath after a war is rebellion. By nightfall they reached the cliffs, black spires rising from the desert like broken teeth. The old relay base lay beneath, half buried in stone, its entry sealed under layers of rusted armor. Astra pressed her hand against the metal. Her circuits lit blue, scanning the lock. It's old command tech, she said. I can open it. Can you do it quietly? Her eyes flicked toward him. You think I'd forgotten stealth? The lock hissed. The door opened with a low groan, revealing darkness and stale air. They entered carefully, flashlights cutting through dust. The corridors were lined with shattered cryopods. The smell of coolant and memory filled the silence. Astra stopped before one of the pods. Inside, a faded-shaped bones, metal, the remnants of something once alive. Her voice trembled. They said the others didn't survive. Ryan's chest tightened. I'm sorry. She looked at him, voice breaking for the first time. Don't be. Just remember them when you burn the rest. He nodded. Help me reach the data core. They moved deeper until they reached the control chamber. A wall of cracked holoscreens blinked faintly. Ryan pried open the central console, revealing the data crystal pulsing weak light. This is it, he said. Every file, every code from the labs. Astra stared at it, her entire existence humming inside that crystal. You'd really destroy this? Yes. She reached out, fingers hovering over the light. If I erase this, I erase proof that I ever existed. Ryan said softly, No, you'll prove you're more than what made you. The words hit something deep. She took the crystal, held it close. Then she whispered in Crithian, a prayer half mechanical, half human, and crushed it in her hand. The light died. Silence. Ryan looked at her, the faint tremor in her hand, the tears she didn't shed. You did the right thing. She shook her head. Right and wrong died with the war. No, he said quietly. They just need new definitions. A sudden tremor shook the floor. The walls groaned. Ryan drew his rifle instantly. They tracked us. Astra's eyes widened. Impossible. An explosion cut her words short. Fire rolled through the corridor. The syndicate had found them. Ryan grabbed her arm. Back exit! Move! They sprinted through the collapsing tunnel as debris rained down. Behind them, syndicate troopers poured through the breached black armor, crimson visors. Ryan turned, fired. 2 fell. The others advanced. Astra stopped, raised both hands. Energy burst outward, a wave of kinetic force that threw the soldiers against the walls. But it took something out of her. She staggered, the light under her skin flickering erratic. Ryan caught her before she fell. Easy. Her voice shook. You shouldn't have come for me. Too late to regret it now, he said, half smiling despite the smoke. They burst through the emergency hatch into the open air. The desert night greeted them with lightning and chaos. Ryan pulled her toward the skimmer. We're not dying here. She looked back at the burning base, the graves of her people, the ashes of her origin. Then where do we go? Ryan started the engine. Forward. The wind tore across the plain as the base collapsed behind them. They rode in silence until the fires were a distant glow. The storm had cleared, leaving a sky full of fractured stars. Astra finally spoke. You risked everything to destroy that data. Why? Ryan's eyes stayed on the horizon. Because I've seen what happens when humans stop seeing others as people. I helped build that machine once. Now I break it. She looked at him, voice quiet. You're not who I thought you were. He almost smiled. Neither are you. For a while, they said nothing, just the hum of the skimmer and the night wind through broken rock. Then Astra added, almost to herself, "If I'd met you before the war, maybe I'd have believed in your kind." Rain glanced at her. "You believe now?" Her eyes softened, glowing faint under the stars. "I'm trying." Hours later, they reached the outskirts of the canyon's safe ground for the moment. Ryan powered down the skimmer and leaned back, exhaustion catching up to him. Astra stood a few feet away, watching the first light creep over the dunes. "You ever wonder," she said, "if redemption is just another word for survival?" Ryan's voice was low. "Maybe, but if we keep trying, maybe it becomes something else." She turned to him. "What?" "Hope," he said simply. For the first time, she smiled without resistance. Above them, dawn cracked the horizon, gold spilling over metal and dust. For one fleeting moment, the war felt far away. The desert didn't sleep, it only waited. By the time Commander Rian Holt and Astravale reached the outpost again, Talon 9's night sky had already begun to crackle with the sound of engines in the distance. The Syndicate had found their trail faster than expected. The scanners screamed before dawn. 6 ships, armored, bearing the red insignia of the Rift Syndicate. Their signal codes were encrypted, but one name pulsed across the frequency like a wound reopening. Vorkane. Ryan remembered that name from the war logs. A slaver turned general. The one who'd built his empire on the sale of living hybrids. The one who'd sold Astra. Now he was coming back for what he thought he owned. The base shuddered as Ryan loaded power cells into the rail turrets. The hum of energy filled the narrow corridors. Astra moved beside him, silent but sure-handed, her alien circuits bright under the emergency lights. "How many?" she asked. "Too many," Rain replied. "But the defenses might hold long enough to make them regret trying." He looked at the horizon where the first ships cut through the storm front. "They won't stop, not until they take me." Ryan checked the chamber on his rifle. "Then we give them a reason to stop breathing." Astra turned, her expression tight. "You can still run." "So can you," he said. She met his gaze, the faintest spark of something unspoken passing between them. "I've run enough." By sunrise, the desert burned orange with dust. The first volley hit plasma bolts slamming into the outer walls. The air smelled of scorched metal. Ryan barked orders to the auto turrets, voice calm even as the ground quaked. Astra stood at the upper ridge, hands raised, channeling power through the defense grid. Lightning bent itself to her will, arcs of energy snaking through the storm like living veins. One by one, the Syndicate dropships descended, black shadows splitting the sky. Ryan's turret fired, cutting the first from the air. The second landed hard near the perimeter wall, doors hissing open. Out poured soldiers in matte armor, their visors red with reflected fire. Ryan moved fast, rifle kicking against his shoulder as he dropped the first 3. The fourth made it past the fence until Astra unleashed a shockwave that threw the man into the dirt like a broken doll. "Nice shot!" Rian shouted over the noise. "Not a shot," she said, her eyes glowing brighter. "A warning." "Don't waste warnings," Ryan muttered. The battle pressed closer. Inside the command bay, systems flickered under the strain. Ryan's mechanical arm sparked as he rewired the generator. "They're hitting the reactor conduit." "I can stabilize it," Astra said, already moving toward the core chamber. "Wait, it's irradiated," he called, but she was gone. He swore under his breath and followed. The lower decks were chaos alarms screaming, steam pouring from ruptured pipes. Astra stood before the containment field, her skin glowing too brightly now, like her body was burning from the inside out. "You can't absorb that much charge," Ryan shouted. "I'm not absorbing it," she said. "I'm redirecting it." Energy leapt from her palms, searing white as she poured it into the reactor. The overload readings steadied. The entire outpost stopped shaking. Then she staggered, the glow flickering. Ryan caught her before she fell, lowering her to the floor. "Astra!" Her eyes fluttered open, weak but alive. "It's stable. You're welcome." He exhaled, half laughing. You always have to win, don't you? I prefer surviving, she whispered. He looked at her, jaw set. Then let's finish this. Outside, the storm thickened, plasma rain and fire. The Syndicate's main cruiser descended, engines howling like thunder. The ground trembled under its landing thrusters. From the ramp stepped Vor Kane, tall, heavy armor, plated in black and gold. His voice echoed through an amplifier. "Commander Holt," he called, "I respect your persistence, but that creature belongs to me." Ryan stepped forward, rifle in hand. "Funny. She doesn't seem to think so." Kane laughed, the sound of a man who had forgotten the meaning of mercy. "You think you can protect her? You're one soldier on a dying world." Ryan raised his rifle. "That's usually enough." Kane gestured. A wave of troopers surged forward. The desert exploded. Ryan fired until the barrel overheated, then switched to his sidearm, moving with brutal efficiency, old instincts cutting through the chaos. Astra joined the fight beside him, hurling arcs of plasma that tore through the attackers. For every man who fell, 2 more came. Kane advanced through the smoke, raising a heavy iron blade. Sparks cascaded across his armor as he approached. Ryan met him halfway. The clash rang out, steel against charged metal, each impact lighting the dark. Kane swung hard. Ryan ducked, his cybernetic arm catching the blade and locking it in place. "You should have stayed in your war," Kane hissed. "I never left," Ryan said, and fired point blank into Kane's chestplate. The shot staggered him, but didn't drop him. Kane slammed Ryan back into the sand, the blade cutting deep into his shoulder. Astra screamed his name and unleashed a surge of power that lit the entire field. Kane flew backward, armor sparking. But before Ryan could recover, a sniper bolt tore through the air and hit Astra square in the side. She stumbled, the light in her veins flickering out like dying stars. Ryan caught her, dragging her behind a ruined wall as more fire rained down. "No, no, stay with me," he muttered, pressing his hand over the wound. Her silver blood shimmered against his palm, warm, alive. She smiled faintly, breath ragged. "You asked if I believed in humans." He shook his head. "Don't." "I do now," she whispered. Ryan's chest burned. "You're not dying here, Astra." She touched his face weakly. "Then stop talking and finish it." He nodded once. The soldier took over. He set her against the wall, picked up his rifle, and walked straight into the storm. The world narrowed to sound and movement. Plasma fire tore through the air. Ryan moved like something carved from purpose, no hesitation, no thought of survival. He cut through the Syndicate lines, reaching Kane as the sky cracked open above them. Kane turned, half his helmet shattered, rage burning through his one good eye. "You can't win." "Didn't come to win," Ryan said. "Came to end it." He triggered the detonation charge he'd planted on the reactor minutes earlier, a failsafe tied to his arm. Kane froze. "You'll kill yourself." "Already dead a long time ago," Ryan replied, and pressed the switch. The blast ripped through the desert, swallowing the battlefield in a column of light. When the dust finally settled, the outpost was gone. The Syndicate cruiser lay cracked open like an egg, smoke curling from its hull. Ryan lay half buried under debris, armor scorched, one side of his body blackened from the explosion. He coughed once, the taste of ash in his throat. Footsteps approached light, careful. He blinked. Through the haze, Astra appeared, burned, trembling, but alive. Her wound was sealed with liquid metal. Her eyes glowed dim but steady. "You always come back," he said weakly. Her voice was soft but steady. "You always make it impossible not to." She knelt beside him, hands glowing as she repaired what she could of his shattered arm. "You shouldn't have done that." He smiled faintly. "It worked, didn't it?" "Barely," she said. "You humans, you break everything." "Maybe," he whispered, "but sometimes we build better after." Her fingers lingered against his chest, feeling his heartbeat under the soot. "Ryan?" He reached up, brushed her cheek with what little strength remained. "You said once I'd regret trusting an alien. She leaned close, tears glimmering like liquid silver. "Do you?" He smiled, eyes closing. Not for a second. The wind howled through the wreckage, carrying away the last of the smoke. Astra looked out over the ruined desert syndicate bodies scattered, engines burning. Then she turned back to him, pressing her forehead gently against his. "Then rest, Commander. You've earned it." He didn't move, but his breathing steadied. Slow, even. Alive. By the next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was clear for the first time in years. The ruins of the outpost glowed faintly in the sunlight. Melted steel turned to glass. Astra stood among it all, her cloak torn, her silver skin streaked with dust. She stared at the horizon where the syndicate ships once stood and whispered, "It's over." Behind her, Rian stirred. "Not yet," he said hoarsely. "We still have to live with it." She smiled faintly. "That's the hardest part." He pushed himself up, wincing, and looked at the endless expanse ahead, a world half dead, half reborn. "What now?" she asked. Ryan looked toward the sunrise. "We rebuild. Not for command. Not for war for us." Astra followed his gaze. "You think humans and Crithians can coexist?" He reached out, his hand steady this time. "We already are." Her eyes softened. She took his hand. Above them, the wind shifted, carrying warmth instead of cold. For the first time since either could remember, Talon 9 felt like it might one day be something other than a battlefield. And for that single, fragile moment, survival felt like victory. The wind had changed. For the first time in years, it carried warmth instead of ash. Across the scorched plains of Talon 9, the sun climbed through a pale haze, painting gold over ruins that no longer smoked. The war had ended quietly, without parades, without orders. Just the silence of survival. Weeks had passed since the siege. The syndicate was gone. The outpost lay in ruins, and yet something lived. Reinhold walked through the wreckage, every step slow but certain. His shoulder was patched with rough metal, the scars still fresh. The half-cybernetic arms twitched now and then, reacting to phantom pain. He ignored it. His eyes were on the horizon, where green had begun to grow. Vines clung to old metal, coaxed up through the soil by machines Astra had built from scavenged parts. She called them growth drones, tiny hovering spheres that carried water to where her alien seedlings had taken root. The result was impossible. The first living garden on Talon 9. He stopped beside one of the small plots, crouched, and brushed his fingers over a cluster of pale blue blossoms. They glowed faintly in the morning light. "She called these soul flowers," a voice said behind him. Ryan turned. Astra Vale stood in the doorway of what had once been the command center, now little more than steel ribs in shadow. She looked different under daylight. The circuitry that used to crawl bright under her skin now pulsed with a softer rhythm, almost human. Her wound had healed, but it left a faint silver mark along her side, like a memory written into her body. Ryan stood. "They're spreading faster than weeds." "That's the idea," she said, walking toward him. "The soil still remembers war. It needs something stubborn to overwrite it." He smiled faintly. "Sounds familiar." She glanced at him, half amused. "Humans and their metaphors." "And aliens and their gardens," he replied. They stood there for a moment, quiet except for the sound of wind moving through the metal bones of the base. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable, shared. Later that day, they worked side by side, repairing what little of the outpost could be saved. Ryan fixed solar relays. Astra recalibrated the atmosphere filters. There was rhythm to it now, something close to peace. During a break, she sat on a steel beam overlooking the plains. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked. "Every day," he admitted, "and every time I decide not to." "Why?" "Because there's nowhere left that feels real," he said, "except this." Astra studied him for a moment. "You don't belong to war anymore, Rin." He nodded. "Maybe not, but I don't know what comes after." She tilted her head, the light in her eyes soft. Maybe belonging doesn't come after. Maybe it grows while you're still searching. Ryan gave a quiet laugh. You sound like one of those old philosophers Command used to ignore. Command ignored everything that didn't end in fire. He looked at her then, really looked. The lines of her face, the strength that had replaced fear, the way her voice had gentled without losing its edge. You ever regret surviving? He asked softly. Astra's gaze drifted toward the horizon. Sometimes, she said. But then the sun rises again, and I remember that regret means I'm still alive. That evening, the storms finally cleared for good. The sky turned pure, a rare blue that almost hurt to look at. Ryan sat outside, cleaning his weapon more out of habit than need. Astra approached, carrying something wrapped in cloth. She set it on the table. For you. He unwrapped it carefully. Inside lay a small ring, forged from the alloy of his damaged arm, the part she'd replaced with her own tech after the battle. The metal was rough, uneven, with faint lines that pulsed faint light. Ryan blinked. You made this? I used what was left, she said simply. From the war, from you, from me. He turned the ring in his fingers. It's not perfect. Neither are we. Ryan looked up at her. You know what a ring means to my people? I read about it, she said. A promise. To stay. He smiled. Small but real. Then you've done your reading right. Astra hesitated. I didn't make it for myself. I know. He held it out to her. But I think it belongs to both of us. She frowned slightly. That's not how it works. It is now. For a moment, she didn't move. Then slowly she reached out and took it. The light caught her fingers, half metal, half skin. She slipped the ring onto her own hand. It fit perfectly. Ryan said quietly, We're not symbols. We're proof. Proof of what? That even after war, something worth keeping can still grow. As night fell, they walked to the top of the ridge overlooking the desert. The horizon glowed with the faint shimmer of rebirth, plants taking root, drones buzzing quietly, wind carrying seeds further than sight. Astra stopped, looking out. I used to dream of my homeworld, she said. Krithia had skies like molten glass. But when I woke, I couldn't remember the sound of it. Ryan folded his arms. You can build a new one. I already am, she said softly. Here. He turned to her. You think Talon 9 can ever be a home? Not to everyone, she said, but it's enough for us to start the story again. They stood there for a long time, the silence carrying more than words ever could. Finally, Astra said, You could still send for the fleet. You could leave this planet. Ryan looked up at the stars, cold, distant, unchanging. And go where? Back to command? To orders and medals for killing? He shook his head. I think I'll stay with the only person I know who can turn metal into life. She smiled at that, faint but real. Then maybe humanity isn't as doomed as I thought. Maybe, he said, but only because you're part of it now. Later, under the faint light of the moons, Astra opened her neural log for the last time. Her fingers hovered over the device, then began to write. He doesn't speak of the war anymore. He plants things instead. He leaves the world better in quiet ways. I think that's how love happens, without ceremony, without permission. Just two broken systems deciding to rebuild the same sky. She closed the log and placed it beside him as he slept by the fire. In the distance, dawn began to bleed into the sky. When Ryan woke, Astra was already outside, standing barefoot in the soil, watching the sun rise over their fragile garden. The light caught the silver in her skin, turning her into something not quite alien, not quite human, something whole. He walked up beside her. You're awake early. I wanted to see it happen, she said. What? The planet breathing. He followed her gaze. The horizon shimmered with waves of color, plants reflecting the morning light, oxygen vapors twisting like mist. The world was coming back to life. Looks like it's working, he murmured. She nodded. Because we stopped trying to own it. He smiled. You sound like someone I'd follow into another war. There are no more wars, she said quietly. Just rebuilding. Ryan looked down at the soil beneath his boots. Then let's rebuild something worth staying for. Astra turned toward him. The wind caught her hair, lifting it like a silver flame. What would that be? He met her gaze, voice low but certain. A home. She studied him for a long moment. You think you can love someone who isn't human? I already do, he said simply. Astra blinked once as though she hadn't expected to hear it out loud. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that made the word hope feel real. I was built to serve, she whispered. Now I choose to stay. They stood together in the sunlight, two survivors who had rewritten the end of the story. Around them, Talon 9 bloomed. Slowly, stubbornly, beautifully. And somewhere between the silence and the hum of the growing world, humanity found its proof again. She turned to him, her voice soft but steady. You'll regret trusting an alien. He smiled, eyes warm under the morning light. I already regret not trusting sooner. The wind carried their laughter across the open plains, past the ruins, past the scars, until it was indistinguishable from the sound of life returning. For the first time, the world didn't feel broken. It felt reborn. The end.